Imagine going to school every day and coming home and not being able to do any extracurricular activities, no music, no sports, not even hanging out with friends, and you barely have time for homework. So how are you supposed to keep up your academic success? This is what it's like to live as a child in poverty every single day. In America, there are about 21% of all children who live below the poverty line. This is about 15 million, and this is just in America. Worldwide, there's about 3 billion. So just imagine what your life would have been like without all the opportunities that you've been able to have due to not being a low-income household student. Students who come from these low-income households have lower chances of doing well in school than higher-income household students because of the less opportunities that they've been given and the fewer resources that they have. They end up generally having lower academic skills or they develop them slower, psychological health problems, and lower career aspirations. So, like I said, children develop academic skills slower. So the success rate is lower in STEM because it's one of the harder fields to get into, and they just don't have the time or energy to put into it. So they have a lower rate of students in this. In the article, Impact of Poverty on Educational Outcomes for Children, the statistics that are shown for the dropout rate for the ages between 16 and 24 for students who come from low-income households is 11.6%. Whereas for students who don't come from these households, it is 2.8. So that's a really big difference. They also have a large literacy gap. So the reading level when they enter high school is 5 years behind their peers who come from higher income households. So they're already starting 5 years behind. So it's really hard for them to catch up and be where they're supposed to be. This is a lot of times due to less library resources, so they don't have these resources outside of school, so they can't practice their reading as a child, and their parents don't have the time or the money to read to them. Researchers have found in the article Education and Socioeconomic Status that there is a big link between early childhood intervention programs and the social and cognitive abilities that they have. So it might seem kind of obvious, but the parent-child relationship between the parent and child has a big effect on how they live in their future lives. So if they're in poverty, if they're not, because it gives them motivation and confidence to be better, or it might not, depending on the type of relationship they have. So when they create an individual intervention program for these students, they evaluate the child and their family support systems to make sure that that child is getting everything they need out of it because they want them to be able to develop the abilities necessary to live life the best that they can. So they have a lot of psychological health problems due to their low-income households, and they have a lot of learning-related behavior problems, and they come from their home life because caregivers are overworked and overstressed, and then they just come home tired, so they don't have the energy to be as sensitive as these children need them to be, and they don't have the time to help them with their homework, just talk to them about their life. In how poverty affects behavior and academic performance, 36% of low-income household parents were involved in 3 or more school activities, whereas 59% from higher income households were involved in 3 or more school activities. So this is a big difference simply due to the lack of time. So they can't be as involved. And then emotional and educational distress. Parents can't structure a trusting environment for their children because they aren't home for them, and they simply can't do this. So these students end up having low confidence, low self-worth, and they have a hard time collaborating with peers in class because they get really frustrated when they can't solve problems, even though they might be really close to the finish line. And finally, their career aspirations. A lower self-efficacy or a lower drive or feeling that they are going to reach a goal causes them to have fewer career aspirations, unlike their peers who come from high-income households. So they just feel as if they're never going to amount to much and they just don't try. They haven't also been motivated at home, so they don't feel like there's any reason to try harder. There are a lot of career barriers. Again, back to the low reading levels, they already started behind, so they have a hard time catching up, which causes them to not be able to get as good of jobs. And finally, they have less college information. So if they can't have as much information about college or what their future could be like, and they also would have a hard time paying for it, how are they supposed to be excited about their futures? Like students from higher income households are, who have all of the information in the world about colleges. In conclusion, students who come from low income households have fewer resources to continue on the road to academic success. They oftentimes develop academic skills slower, have more psychological health problems, and lower career aspirations, which leads to low academic success. So think about this next time you see a student acting up quite often in school, and just think about where they might have come from and have a little bit of empathy.